It's been 11 years now since Gene Harris shot and killed Dr. Herman Tarnauer, enraged by the threat of losing him to a younger woman. The sensational case touched a nerve with many American women who saw it as a commentary on issues of sex and power and manipulation in modern relationships. 11 years later, the judge who sentenced her thinks she should be free. But Gene Harris remains behind bars, changed in some ways, in others defiant as ever.
There are many people outside who think I either died 5 years ago or was let out 5 years ago. A lot of people are surprised that I'm still in here.
Do you think you are partially here because you were a celebrity?
I was notorious. They thought I was the absolute bitch of Buchenwald when I came in. I don't know where they got that opinion. And they were happy to see me go because also it proved a point. It isn't just poor black women who go to prison. It's middle-class white women who go to prison, too.
Even upper-middle-class white women. A single working mom, yet Gene Harris traveled in a smart social set. She was the companion of a prominent doctor who would become nationally famous for his Scarsdale diet.
It's simple, it's safe, it's satisfying.
And even more famous for being murdered in his bedroom by his 56-year-old lover. It was sensational news.
The headmistress of an expensive private school, Madeira School for Girls, near Washington, D.C., was arrested and charged with second-degree murder.
Her students at Madeira were shocked.
You never think of someone like Mrs. Harris being in jail.
Today, at the Bedford Hills Correctional Facility, she's less known for her notoriety than for her seniority.
Two young women who've just come in were walking in back of me a couple of days ago, and I heard one of them say to the other, "That's Gene Harris. She's been here a long time." And I have been here a long time compared to other women in the state.
How do you mean?
Well, I mean, everybody else goes home sooner. Just that simple.
That's because many women inmates had the street smarts to cop a plea.
I should have plea bargained, I suppose. And I didn't, but I had very bad legal advice.
She was a woman who was used to giving orders rather than taking them.
Joel Arno is the lawyer who defended Gene Harris. He says she wouldn't take his advice to enter the insanity defense of extreme emotional disturbance.
She did what I thought no client should do, and that is she ruled out defenses that would have helped her.
She was just naive in refusing to allow her attorney to plead extreme emotional disturbance.
Russell Leggett was the judge who presided over the 4-month trial. He calls Tarnauer's shooting a crime of passion that most defendants would plead down to manslaughter.
Most of them would have been smart enough to say, hey, I'm caught with the smoking gun, I'll plead extreme emotional disturbance, and they would have been out.
Gene Harris always insisted it was an accident when she shot Hy Tarnauer, but she arrived that night with a gun.
I bought it because I was suicidal. It was my comforting pillow. It was there in my closet for 2 years, and I kept thinking, if this gets one bit worse, I can always blow my head off. And that's what I intended to do that night, and that's what I tried to do that night.
That was Gene's story, that Tarnauer was shot 4 times while they struggled for the gun as he tried to stop her from committing suicide.
She had a greater fear than being convicted. She had a fear that they would find that there was something wrong with her mentally, and that would affect her teaching career, and you could not get her off that.
I should have had a stronger lawyer who didn't listen to me, I guess, who said, look, shut up and sit down and I'll tell you what we're going to do. You're not going to tell me what to do.
On February 24th, 1981, Gene Harris was found guilty of murder in the 2nd degree. A month later, Russell Leggett imposed the mandatory sentence, 15 years to life.
Had Gene been convicted of manslaughter because she acted under extreme emotional disturbance, her sentence would probably have been no more than a minimum of 4 and a maximum of 12. She has done more time out of the minimum than I would have probably given her as a maximum.
Judge Leggett thinks Gene Harris should be out by now. But New York Governor Mario Cuomo takes a hard line on clemency and has turned her down 3 times. She won't be eligible for parole for 5 more years. She's already served 10 years when the national average for murder is 6.5.
I'm being treated as though I were one of the most dangerous, vicious women in the state of New York.
She's bitter. but resigned to the fact that she's not getting out soon. There was a time she indulged a fantasy about life in a cabin in New England where she hopes to live one day. With clemency looking unlikely, she thinks of it less now.
I was thinking of the fabric I wanted on the couch to match the living room draperies and all of the things I was going to do. Now I try to tell myself to forget it for a while and not think about it. I just don't think it's safe to.
The time hasn't gone as slowly as she thought it would, but surprisingly, she says she has not been a model prisoner.
Of all people, Jane, that I should be the one to disillusion you. No, I haven't been a model prisoner. I think of myself as a model prisoner. I essentially mind my own business, and I don't steal things, and I don't lie and cheat and sleep around or do any of the things that go on around here all the time. But I talk back. My mother used to call it impudence, and I guess I'm still impudent sometimes when I say what I think to the people who are pulling my strings.
Much of the last 10 years, she's been involved with the Prison Parenting Center, helping young women learn to be mothers.
The love that a baby gets is what makes them decide.
Jean's learned from them, too, that poverty is the fast track to prison.
1 out of every 4 children in this country now lives in poverty. There is nothing more violent than poverty.
Are you a more complete woman, a more worldly woman for having been incarcerated for these 10 years?
I think so. Unfortunately, that is a poor way to become worldly. I don't recommend it to anyone. I don't want anyone to think that I'm lucky to have been here, but I'm lucky to be learning. Everyone, I mean, if you stop learning, you stop really existing.
Though she's from a different class than most, and old enough to be their grandmother, she's learned that she has a lot in common with many women in the nation's prisons. The same things landed her in jail: drugs and a man.
One woman was interviewed to be on my jury, and they seemed to think that she was frowning on me because I hadn't been married to Dr. Tarnower. And she said, "Oh no, I don't think she's immoral, I just think she's an idiot." It'd be pretty hard to argue that, I think. I think I was an idiot. But
Was he an addiction of sorts?
I suppose you could make a case of that, yes. I think he became an addiction. I guess he did.
The night she killed Hy Tarnower, she was a drug addict in withdrawal from Disoxin, a prescribed medication she'd been taking for years.
Which to me was a little white pill. I found out from my lawyer it's called speed on the street.
And Hy was giving them to you.
Was
so they were prescribed by a doctor.
They were prescribed by a doctor I trusted.
What were the symptoms that you were taking the drug for in the beginning?
For overwork, I guess, and for exhaustion. And Hy said, "Well, here, take some of this. It's pep you up." I take it sometimes myself.
The drug evidently played a big part in who
Not
you were
just
at the
in
time.
Hy's death, but in my life during those years. I was constantly being told, "Calm down," and I wanted to bite them when they said, "Calm down," because I couldn't calm down.
Her sons are frequent visitors. Her friends accept her collect calls, unlike many inmates who've been abandoned by the outside world.
They can't make a phone call because they don't know one living soul who would pick up the tab for it.
And that's truer of women
Much,
than men.
much more true of
Why?
women than men. Why? Come on, you're a woman. You must have some answers of your own. Because women will break their necks to get to visit a man, and I think, maybe this isn't true, but I think they're more apt to remain loyal to a man who's in prison, whereas the men in their lives weren't loyal to begin with.
How are we to think of Hy now?
Well, that's up to you. I think you should think of him as a very interesting man who had, I don't think, a very good sense of values. He was very self-centered, but whatever he was, I found it very appealing, and I was very much in love with him.
Jean Harris has had 2 heart attacks in prison, and despite her campaign to get out, she says when she dies, she wants to be buried there at the Bedford Hills Correctional Facility.